The novel The Ghost of Heaven by Marcus Sedgwick has many, many issues, but they all relate back to stereotypical opinions. So a stereotype is an opinion or idea of an overall gender or a culture or an object, religion or ethnic group or anything else instead of a singular opinion on one individual. There is good and bad stereotypes, and both forms can be seen throughout this novel. In part 1, the Native Americans are stereotyped in two ways. The good opinions, where overall natives are generally all spiritual and religious. This can be seen when the main character listens to tribal stories and legends being told around a fire on page 10 and 10 through 13. However, there are bad opinions, and they set in around page 59 and go till maybe 65, where the author makes it seem like natives have no idea how to communicate by writing. Obviously, from history books, we know that they used cave drawings and painting and symbols to show their stories, and they spoke to communicate. But the era in this novel isn't clarified, so the audience is unsure of whether writing was a form of communication or not for them. But when danger strikes in the novel, the main character in part 1 needs to leave a message for her tribe, and she thinks that writing, she comes up with an idea of writing, but doesn't know how to do it. So in page 59, it says she makes a single mark with a small black charcoal line. That was her first attempt at writing, but by this point, the author, in my opinion, is making natives sound very unintelligent, like they don't know how to do certain things, and it appears to make the entire ethnic group appear that way as well. In part 2, the stereotypes are very, very degrading. Women who use herbal remedies are all witches. For those who do not know the Salem witch trials, it was an era when women and a few men were accused of witchcraft in the States. In this part of the novel, Anna Tunstall is accused for witchcraft in chapter 21 called Damnation. In this chapter, it states, Anna Tunstall, you have been brought before this court and found guilty of practicing treason against your masters and of the murder of the Dolan baby by means of witchcraft. The sentence is death. This stereotype is showing that women who practice medicine or tried to help people were all witches, and if they tried to help people, they'd be accused of witchcraft, and then the community would be turned against them. Anna had a lot of friends in this part, but when the priest started going around and asking for proof that she was a witch, everyone turned against her, because if someone agreed or disagreed with the priest in the wrong way, they would also be accused and sentenced to death in some way. Anna's mother was also accused of witchcraft and was drowned. It was related to in the story, but it wasn't a part of this novel per se. There's also the stereotype in this part that men are overpowering and that they are the ones who control everything. Although this is long before women had rights, so it made sense, but it was still degrading to women that they had no choice in any matter. In part 3, the stereotype is pretty much that the people in insane asylums are nothing, they are worthless, and that they can be used without having anything said about them. This part of the story takes place in the 1920s. Dr. Delgado and his staff tend to use the female patients and not believe that it's right to use them. They don't find that it's against the law or anything. But Dr. James finds that the abuse of the patients is not right, and he tries to take it into his own hands, but that doesn't work because he's the newbie. Also, it says on page 205, because society has no more hope for them, and that explains why all these people are there. It doesn't necessarily mean they have mental issues or they're insane. It could just be that they're weird, and there is a character who the head director believes is completely weird and unnormal, is Dexter, and he treats him like he's extremely dangerous. He tells Dexter to stay away from the doctor's daughter. She's 8 years old. And it's just, they don't trust the patients, and trusting them might actually help them get better, but they treat them like they're nothing. They don't want them there. I don't know, they use them, and it's not right, and it's just, the society believes that they need to be there because they don't want them on the streets of their cities. They rape the females, they're mental aberrations, so they have issues, but they're just made up, and they're just there to say they're there. And then in part 4, it was a little harder to figure out what the stereotype in this part was, because it didn't make sense to me. The main character is in space, and the rest of the people in space are asleep, but they keep dying. And at first, people who are waking up believe that it's extraterrestrials, and then they start understanding that it's actually the first guy who woke up that's killing them, and it's because he's delusional. But they automatically assumed extraterrestrials because they're in space, but also because they believe they're extremely dangerous. So the automatic stereotype there is that if by chance there was actual extraterrestrials, that they are the ones who harm people, and that they're no good and they're not going to be able to help people. They're just there to kill you. So overall, the stereotypes in this novel are mainly degrading to the people. It's not so much a religion or ethnic group, it's just certain people. So like, I guess in part 1 it was an ethnic group, it's the natives. They believe that they're unintelligent, but they also assume that they're all spiritual and religious, but not all of them are. Part 2 is women are always witches. They, just because they try to help somebody means they're a witch, and they're using herbal remedies, and that makes it worse. And in part 3, it's the insane are useless. They're nothing. They need to be off the streets because they're not the norm in society. And then part 4 is the stereotype against things unknown. You don't know them. You automatically assume that they are no good.